Hello, everyone. Welcome to class today for Early Childhood Humanities 362. It is Wednesday when I'm recording this. Please remember Chapter 3 quiz due, and the assignment Talking Without Words is also due today. I'm going to go over Chapter 4 today, discuss that, and then also talk a little bit about the assignment for this week. Every kid needs a champion. Okay? So you'll notice I have several assignments like this throughout the semester where I want you to watch a video, a TED Talk, and sometimes some different ones. And this one is specifically about talking about relationships and the importance of them. So watch the video, answer these questions, write it up in a Word document, and upload it to complete the assignment. Okay. So that's the other assignment for this week besides the Chapter 4 quiz. With that, I'm going to jump right into Chapter 4. This Chapter 4 talks about positive sense of self through verbal communication. So as we skip over here a little bit through the objectives, Chapter 4 talks about a lot about self-awareness, self-esteem, positive, negative interactions, thoughts, conversations. So accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative. Okay. So there are negative things, of course, all throughout our lives, children's lives, in our classrooms every day. And so we can dwell on the negative, we can focus on the negative, or we can also try to find the positive in things that are happening, events, activities, etc. So an old phrase that you've probably heard before, or maybe you haven't, but accentuate the positive. Look at the positive things and try to get rid of the negative component as much as possible. Okay? And so let me look here. I am me. So this part of the book talking about what it looks like in regards to children developing and having a sense of themselves, like understanding themselves, looks very different. Let me find my notes here as I go through. Okay, for example, in early childhood, right? Very early childhood, when we talk about physical characteristics, abilities, possessions, relationships, preferences, all of these things change as we grow and develop, right? So a physical characteristic in early childhood is things like the color of your eyes, the color of your hair, right? Abilities could be things such as what they can do, right? I can climb, I can run, I can jump. Possessions, of course, are things that the child has. You know, they have a teddy bear, they have a bike, they have a book. What are some relationships that they have in their lives? Probably with an adult, a parent, a grandparent, an aunt, uncle, sister, brother, cousin, you know, variety of things. And then preferences, right? What they like, compare like one thing more than another, or things that they like, you know, ice cream and chocolate, or like strawberries instead of bananas, you know, something like that. So in early childhood, children are able to share these, you know, things about themselves, but they are very not minimal, but they're very simplistic in regards to what they are. Of course, as children start to grow and develop, these things are going to change a little bit in terms of what they can share about themselves, what they can describe about themselves. For example, as they go into middle childhood or early and middle childhood, they're going to be able to talk about the past, the present, and the future, right? And also talk about like things that they used to do, or things they did in the past, things they like now, things they want to do, or something that's going to go on ahead of time. For example, I can run faster now than I used to. I can run faster this year than I did last year. Or when I was scared, when I was little, I was scared of the dark, but I'm not anymore. You know, those types of things. Next year, I'm going to be old enough to ride a horse. Variety of components there. Once you get into the middle and later elementary age, there's a little bit of there's more comparisons that are happening. For example, I run faster than PJ, but Rebecca spells better than me, right? So there's some comparison, or I run faster than PJ, but he spells better than me, or vice versa, you know, so there's comparisons at this level. And then as children go beyond that, they begin to do some internal components in terms of their values, their beliefs, and the things that they that are important to them. Okay, so that's how the kind of the conversation or the discussion in regards to positive sense of self, right? As children are younger, they know about themselves, the things they like, and they grow and develop. They start to compare themselves a little bit more. Then they start to compare with others, and then they look at that that internal, not conflict, but internal thoughts, internal beliefs, the values, and stuff. So think about someone who is 3 years old. Okay, how might they describe themselves? Okay, what would they talk about? Okay, compare that to someone who is 10 years old. How might they describe themselves? Think of the difference between those two for, you know, a couple minutes, and how that description might or will be different. So self-esteem is an important piece of children growing up, and as we become adults and continue to be adults, self-esteem is something that is important, right? Questions that children might ask themselves, or they might ask others. Do you like me? Do I like myself? What can I do? Am I successful? What happens when I try things? These questions are kind of I don't want to say a foundation, but are all things that you know, children would talk to others about or think about, right? Young children are going to ask others, do you like me? Okay? And so a response of no is probably going to bring self-esteem down a little bit. A response of yes, of course, is going to increase it, right? Improve that self-esteem. Children looking at the things they can do, both physically, mentally, cognitively, academically, you know, they might struggle with a lot of things, and that might cause their self-esteem to suffer, right? So a variety of these questions can improve or decrease the amount of self-esteem that a child has. Okay? And so three large components of self-esteem: worth, competence, and control. Right? So the extent to which people value and like themselves, as well as perceive that they are valued by others, is a measure of their worth. Okay, worth prompts those questions, like we talked about just back here. Okay, and so for young children, these questions are important. Okay, and as children grow and develop, some of these questions might not become as important to them based upon some of the things they control, their competence, their understanding, their values. Right? Competence then next is the degree to which individuals believe they can accomplish things and achieve their goals. Okay, so their understanding, their ability to achieve the things that they want to achieve. Sometimes children try just stay with very simple things or easy things, so they may have a high competence level. Sometimes children try challenging things all the time, so they might feel that their competence is not very good, but even though they are doing very difficult, hard things. When children act on objects, try new tasks, explore their capabilities, and interact with peers and adults, they are learning. So it's important that they challenge themselves, that they try a variety of things. Control is the next one. So dimension of control refers to how much influence individuals have on outcomes and events in their lives. Children practice this in a variety of ways, such as an infant prolongs an interaction with the caregiver by smiling, cooing. Toddler chooses a red cup, not the green one. The preschooler manages to zip her own coat. Kindergartner chooses a book from the library, etc. Okay, so there is control within children, even though it may not seem like that is a large control component. Okay, so each time kids encounter a new situation, they make three judgments: am I valuable? Am I capable? What can I influence, and how? And so that goes back into the trio of this self-esteem component. Okay. And so kind of think of it as a circle a little bit, almost, right, where things are constantly working in regards to the worth, the confidence, and the self-control. Self-esteem, of course, grows and develops, or changes as children get older and engage more in activities and with peers. For example, ages 2 to 4. Usually self-esteem is developed with concrete observable attributes. They focus on one thing at a time as children. And the self is located in here and now in terms of what's happening. As children get older, they look at past, present, and future components as well. So all children typically go through similar developmental sequences on their way to better self-understanding. And each kid or child comes to their own conclusions regarding the trio of self-esteem. And some will enter adolescence with strong sense of worth, competence, and control. Others will have less favorable self-perception. Of course, we know that it depends on a variety of factors, right, in regards to children's self-esteem, not just based upon themselves, but others, their peers, their family members, their community, the activities they're engaged in. Self-esteem develops from within, but also is influenced by quite a few people and individuals and activities outside of the children. And children who have a healthy self-esteem typically seem likable, capable people whose decisions and actions make a positive difference in their lives and others, whereas children whose estimations of worth, competence, and control are generally negative are characterized by having poor self-esteem. They often experience feelings of inadequacy, incompetency, fear, rejection, less likely to be objective about their capabilities, and more likely to focus on the negative components of that. So as teachers, we want to try to, if we see students, talking about themselves negatively a lot, we want to try to interject positive, specific, things that they do very well. And it's not all or nothing in regards to self-esteem. There is, children can have positive, specific components of believing in what they do, and they can have negative ideas about certain aspects of things that they do as well. So it's not just an all or none, but it is important that that we work with children to bolster their self-esteem, bolster their self-image, provide positive thoughts to them to help increase their self-esteem, especially if they are struggling with that. Okay. Here it talks about the verbal environments and how important those are. We've all been exposed to negative verbal environments and hopefully positive verbal environments as well, hopefully more positive than negative, but think about some environments you've been in, both positively and negatively, and if they have affected anything that you have done, your mood, how you went about doing things, as well. So those are important things to think about. So let me move on in this. So of course we know, like, in negative verbal environments, children typically feel unworthy, incompetent, or ineffectual as a result of what adults do or sometimes don't say to them. So obviously things like screaming, yelling from the adult perspective is a negative environment, but sometimes, like you said, doing nothing at all or ignoring can be a sign of that negative component as well. Now, positive verbal environments are typically filled with a pleasant conversation. Excuse me, I got the hiccups. Children talking to one another, talking to adults, using positive language, self-understanding. So all these different components, right? The behavior reflections, effective praise, conversation. There's typically open-ended questions, shared narratives. We're paraphrasing reflections, meaning when children talk to us, we're sharing, we're talking back in regards to what they said and kind of summarizing it, right? So these positive environments are important, and if we can model them, show students what those look like, maybe those can be carried on when they return home as well. But we use words to convey warmth to children. We use words to demonstrate interest to children. We also treat child talk as important, right? So when children are talking, we make eye contact, mirror their demeanor, listen attentively, have them elaborate on ideas, allow them to finish telling their story or whatever it is that they're talking about. Speak courteously to children as much as possible. Speak with children in conversation throughout the day or conversationally, use adult language. To build relationships with children, because that's how children also learn languages. Encourage kids to express interest in themselves as well. Use children's names in a positive way, be genuine, all kinds of different ways that we can use that positive environment and establish it as important, okay? Establishing a positive verbal environment is important, but we could potentially unintentionally slip into negative habits, such as underestimating our impact the words have on children, speak without thinking, caught up in a hurried pace of job, things that are happening and rushing. And when we get rushed and hurried, sometimes we have a tendency to forget things or say things shortly, brush people off. So we have to be careful on that. So research says that positive verbal environments don't happen automatically or consistently without intent and forethought. So we have to be very intentional on what we are doing. Okay. So behavior reflections are non-judgmental statements to children regarding some aspect of the behavior person. So as an adult, we might observe a child and then comment to the child about their physical attributes, activities. Such statements do not express opinion or evaluation, but are exactly about what the adult sees in the child's actions. So take a look at these sentences here. Which are these, or what would be considered behavior reflections? Okay, that is specifically non-judgmental statements to children regarding some aspect of their behavior or person. Okay, so there are quite a few of them in there, right? But you can tell you yawned an enormous yawn. That's one, right? Because it's saying exactly what they did. You wrote your entire name. You went down the slide. You're dressed in red. You know, those are easy components in terms of the reflections and that the adult is just visiting with them or talking to them about the things that they are observing. That doesn't provide much opportunity for the child to respond in those situations. They could say yes or yeah or okay. You know, there's not much conversation in regards to that. Effective praise is important. Okay? Effective positive praise. So positive, selective, and specific. Okay. We might assume that praise favorably influences children's self-esteem, but research does say that's not always so, even if it's just generic praise. For effective praise to be effective, meaningful feedback pertinent to the task is important. Okay. Selective praise means that it is reserved for situations in which it is genuinely deserved. It is not given in all situations in a blanket statement to all children. Okay, so it's got to be selective. Of course, it's got to be positive, right? We can give corrective feedback, right, as well. It might be, and corrective feedback can be positive also, right? It doesn't have to be negative. So one thing that I often noticed or talked about with people is, you know, if you're going to correct a behavior or a child is doing something you do not want them to do, don't just say, don't do that. Tell them what you want them to do instead. Okay, because sometimes children don't understand what they should be doing differently. Okay. Please don't run down the hallway. I would like you to walk down the hallway instead. Okay? If you give that direction of the positive or specifically what you want them to do, there's a better chance that they will do it for you right away, and then also the next time they're in that setting. Okay. It's also important for praise to be specific, right? And that you are very detailed in what you're talking about, rather than just saying in a certain situation, hey, good job. Well, what was the good job? Hey, I liked how you pushed your chair in and got up from your desk and got into line without running into anyone. Right? Something like that. Okay, so be positive, be selective, be specific in order for praise to be effective and for it to be genuinely received by the child. And one of the most valuable ways adults promote children's positive sense of self is to engage in conversation with the children about things children want to discuss. Okay? Why is this? Well, because if children, if we can talk about things that children is interested in, it builds them up, right? It gives them confidence that you're interested in, other people are interested in the things that they are interested in. Okay, so it's important to have a child-centered conversation to help the child feel more confident about expressing their thoughts, ideas, and feelings. And maybe we can even provide some vocabulary, some language support, some development, so that down the road or in a conversation with somebody else, another friend, a peer, or another adult, they have ideas, thoughts, and the abilities to use those words, those actions, those thoughts as well. And so important to have conversation with children to build up their sense of self-worth specifically around things they are interested in. It doesn't always have to be about that, but it's important that you do. And how you do that is to work with open-ended questions. Okay? Open-ended questions have, of course, multiple possible answers, but no single correct answer. Okay? The purpose is to get children to think about what they're doing, express their ideas, their thoughts, their emotions, right? So you can see here, if we take a look, which ones are the open-ended questions in your mind? So we've got a few here, right? Tell me about this trip. How could we figure it out? Why do you think it won't work? Right? These specific questions here, where is the chalk? What is the state flower? Was it snowing at grandma's? What fruit would you like? Those are very, short answers, right? There's maybe a couple right answers there. So these other ones are very open-ended. There's multiple ways. Tell me about your trip. The child could tell you a variety of things about their trip. Maybe there was a couple things they enjoyed, right, and a couple things that they didn't like. So we want to try to keep those open-ended questions as much as possible. There are situations in setting for closed-ended questions, right? But as much as you can help them or ask them to provide multiple answers or think about answers, the better connection and building up self-esteem that you'll have. You also want to try to paraphrase some of their conversations, right? And reflection. Don't say everything back word for word, but just talk a little about, paraphrase some of the information you're hearing from them to help them feel like they are being heard and that you understand and that you are listening. So in shared narratives, you might have children talk about, share, have a conversation about what they remember or what they might do next, how things might happen. Excuse me. Shared narratives contribute to children's self-awareness and self-identity as members of the group. Children and teachers create shared narratives by telling a story using the children in the class as the main characters. The plot, for example, may revolve around a typical event that happened within the group. And then the story might highlight an important group accomplishment and the contributions of the individual to that outcome. Okay, and so here talking about making a house out of a large refrigerator box. Okay, how can you get all the children involved in that? Asking them what to do, what's the first step, what to do next, who did what, why did they do it this way? So getting the kids to talk about a story, share a story, getting them all involved and engaged is that shared narrative piece, and that helps them to stay engaged, helps them to be part of a group. When you're part of a group, typically you have a a higher sense of self-esteem because you're involved with things. Not saying that people or children who are like to do things by themselves don't have high self-esteem, but younger children and elementary children typically want to be involved and engaged with others when they're doing a variety of activities. Right? So the last couple slides here talk about some things to avoid, and I'm pulling up my notes here. But these things here, some of these I was not familiar with, so I'm going to talk to you about some of them. But parroting, for example, a common way adults initially paraphrase children is to duplicate exactly the child's words and voice tone. It can often be offensive to children because it makes the adult sound insincere and condescending. It is a natural first step for us, right? But we shouldn't. We should vary our responses as much as possible. So if you think of parroting, a parrot will repeat, the things that they hear or they're supposed to, right? So we want to be careful with that. We can repeat, we can summarize, we can reflect, but we want to make sure that it is not nonstop, that it is in our voice, right? And we're not being kind of condescending to that. We don't want to reflect on everything the child is talking about, right? Perfunctory reflecting is reflecting without thinking is not appropriate. It's another form of parroting. So if you find yourself simply going through the motions or responding absent-mindedly to children, stop and refocus, intensify our efforts of listening and reflecting and responding to the children. Speaking to the children in third person, right? So there are times when we do talk to children in the third person, right? We want to make a comment like, I want everybody to know that Johnny did a great job today in this or that or whatever it might be. Okay, that is great. Okay, but you don't want to do it when it is degrading. You don't want to do it when you are talking to another adult and you don't want them to hear that. So we have to be careful in regards to speaking with children in the third person. Okay, correcting children's overestimation of their abilities, right? Sometimes we want to let children figure that out themselves, right? If somebody says, a child says, "Oh, I'm a perfect speller," but if we reply, "Well, most of the time you do fine, but you do get some words wrong." In early and middle childhood, it's common for children to overestimate their abilities. Correcting them does not necessarily help in that situation, right? It can actually hurt the relationship we might have with the child with that piece. Okay? Turning reflections into question, another thing that we want to try to avoid, instead of saying "aren't you," "didn't you," "don't you," or "right" type of thing to end the sentence, or raising our voice at the end. We want to be careful with that in regards to how we reflect, visit with students. There are times to ask questions. We just have to be careful with that. One of the most common misuses of reflecting occurs because adults want some sign from the children that their reflection is right, that our reflection is right. We don't have to have that all the time, right? So just have to be careful in regards to that. Okay, answering your own questions rather than waiting for children to answer. So we're talking about wait time, for example, right? Asking a question, if the children aren't answering it, maybe we need to rephrase it, okay, rather than giving them the answer. Okay? Answering children's questions with questions of our own. Now, we might ask questions for clarification from the student, right? But if we're not sure of how to answer a question, we want to find that out. Right? We want to make sure that we work with them to understand what they're asking and also to find that correct answer. Ineffective praise, of course, does not work. Interrupting children's activities. Now, there's a time and place for that, right? When we're cleaning up, it's time to go. We might have to interrupt them, but we want to be careful not to interrupt things that are going on that are great. If there's a lot of exploration and stuff going on, so we can observe quietly nearby and respond with nonverbal signals, such as a smile, nod, laughter, those types of things. They're working hard at something. Occasional reflection is good, but we don't want to interrupt. Okay? hesitating to speak, we might fumble for the right words when trying to implement skills in this chapter, but sometimes by the time we think of a response, opportunity to use a skill may have slipped by, or the words that come out may sound slighted, different, kind of not right. We just want to keep working, don't give up. And working on reflections, implementing praise, effective praise, doing open-ended questions might be a little hard at first in regards to building that up, using that with children, especially young children. And it might sound forced, mechanical, different, but keep at it, keep working on it. It's important that we continue to do those to help children. So again, here is our pyramid that we have at almost the end of every chapter, right? But our social support pyramid and looking at positive sense of self through verbal communication. So positive relationships at the beginning. Okay, listen. We're going to listen to kids, talk with them, and talk to them. Okay, positive verbal environments in our classroom as much as possible. All these different components here in terms of like the behavior reflections, effective praise, shared narratives, and so on. And then some children are going to need some intervention, right? Some children that might really suffer with their self-esteem or self-worth. We might have to provide some one-on-one time, some counseling time, some other resources to help them build up their self-esteem, their self-worth, and their sense of self. Okay, so chat is chapter 4. Please take the time to complete your assignments for this week. Chapter 4 quiz and the well, I can't remember the name of that other assignment. Every kid needs a champion video. Okay. If you have questions, please make sure you finish chapter 3 in the teaching without words assignment, 11:30 tonight, which is Wednesday the 14th. We'll talk to you soon. See you next week. Take care. Have a great day.